Hello everyone! Welcome to a brand new Ivory devlog. It's been a very long time since the last one, hasn't it? For those that don't know me, I'm Aspenly, and this is my little series going over a small King of the Hill map I've been working on and tracking its development. Ivory's development has been delayed quite a bit, alongside a few other projects I was working on, all for various reasons I'll dive into at the end of the video. But I'm now back to regularly working on the level whenever I can find the time. And despite those delays that came up, I've still made a lot of progress since my last video. After all, Ivory was only at Alpha 7 in the last development log, a very early stage in the map's lifespan overall, but it's now at Beta 3, after having gone through 10 more Alpha versions. So yeah, I'd say I made a tiny bit of progress while I was away. Hitting Beta, as far as I'm concerned, is a gigantic leap, which is the exact reason why I wanted to finally make this new devlog, as it means most of the layout is pretty settled in by this point. Things are still going to change around, as I've been doing layout iterations here and there to work on specific areas of feedback, but it means the flow will remain mostly the same. It also means I'm now on the fun part of level design. I get to art pass! And I absolutely adore art passing. Nothing makes me happier than getting to detail a space and to really think about its functionality in terms of world building and level design at the same time. It's quite the puzzle to get them both working seamlessly, but when you solve it, mwah, beautiful. So on that note, let's get into it. First with some of the gameplay changes. I'll discuss the major changes first in unique individual sections, and then I'll move on to listing the smaller, notable ones in a little collection. Then we'll get into my future plans. So let's get to it. So what has changed majorly between Alpha 7 to today? Without knowing all of the details and looking at the two side by side, it wouldn't really seem like much got changed at all, if anything. But that's because by the time of Alpha 7, mid was very locked down on a layout basis. The devlog in fact covered the changes I made to the area with the hopes that the version I settled on was pretty well balanced compared to its previous iterations, and the version we ended up at by Alpha 7 really did stick. Not a lot of changes needed to be made to this area. I still did a tiny bit of experimentation down the line and tweaks here and there, and I'm still going to continue that trend. But what we ended up with works, and gets very little negative feedback, if any negative feedback at all. So from Alpha 7 to around Alpha 13, a lot of the changes were primarily focused on a topic I covered in that last devlog, the spawn yard and spawn transition routes. These continue to be changed every single version, as I really wanted to nail down a keen balance when it came to the routes into and leaving each team's spawn. I find that because Ivory has this weird kind of X-shape approach going on when it comes to entering mid, it means transition routes from spawn have to be a little more unconventional compared to other King of the Hill maps that also fall under the viaduct formula. With my current exits, they're very close together compared to other maps such as Proot, Bagel and Viaduct, but they still have somewhat long walk times as they all have longer 45-degree angle hallways. This is done with the goal of keeping the entrances to leave spawn close together within the spawn yards. I've been very obsessed with the goal of balancing out the routes from spawn for two primary reasons. Firstly, I want to make it so spawn camping happens as little as possible. And by making the exits oppressive over anyone attempting to enter the spawn yard, with giving the people coming out of spawn high ground and active cover, it helps to work towards that goal. But my second reason is that I want to balance out player route choices. After all, one major consistent theme that's cropped up in playtests is Valley's popularity as a route. This is because it's a really nice little area for engineers to set up in, alongside being your way to use connector and providing a pretty safe and powerful way to push back onto the point. But this focus means a team on the back foot will often ignore the flank entirely, in favour of everyone taking the valley, primarily due to teleporters being placed here by the engineer, essentially just funneling everyone into this one route. Now, I'm absolutely no expert, and the map hasn't been played nearly enough yet to say for certain, but I think this is a poor choice on the player's ends. The flank can still provide a really strong advantage for pushing if the defending team is too focused on fighting off that valley push. So the large part of balancing out the spawn exits is to try and make it so the flank doesn't get ignored, which is a really tough ask, especially since I actively have to compete with players' desires to just take the teleporters right outside their spawn doors. But it's still something I'm trying to achieve and balance out with travel times, alongside making the flank easier to rotate to when you're in the backyard. On that fun little note, travel times are another reason as to why these are so important to balance out, and I personally found that the sweet spot on most King of the Hill maps for heavy to get to mid on all possible routes is around 17 to 20 seconds. With Ivory, when I last tested travel times, falling around the 17-second mark. By Alpha 13 though, I really feel like the spawn routes hit a good spot, so they haven't changed drastically since then. In fact, there's been very little feedback about them in general since that last iteration. So despite me thinking that the current routes are a little bit boring, just a tiny bit, they also serve their purpose as well, and these routes may stay roughly the same going into the future. That's it for these spawn route designs honestly. Like I said, they haven't changed much since Alpha 13, so let's get into the other kind of major but not really major changes, and we'll move on from there. How about we move on to a fun topic which is half the bane of any mapper's existence: sightlines. In general, sniper can be a pretty hard thing to balance on King of the Hill maps, as you don't want to give them spots that are too hard to contest with a lot of control over the point itself. But due to the very nature of King of the Hill as a game mode, this tends to happen more often than not, but it's our job as level designers to try and counter this. That's all pretty foundational stuff. But what I want to talk about is the things I've changed in regards to sightlines at mid, as one of the largest changes I made to the midpoint itself actually addressed that former issue. You see, ever since Alpha 1, I've had this central balcony as a primary spot for snipers to use in order to try and contest a point, and I've always intended to have it be somewhat limited. After all, as previously discussed, having a hard to contest snipe spot with a lot of view over the point is a problem. And for the longest time, I really felt like the balcony we arrived at for Alpha 7 was pretty well balanced in all regards. But over time, I began to realise a fatal flaw. See, every single playtest, the snipers would very rarely actually go onto the balcony. This is because I made the exit to the balcony at a 45-degree angle which could view over the point. I love my 45-degree angles. I think they're a bit quirky, and they stop my layouts from feeling too boring or blocky. They just make levels flow nicer. I think they're neat. But in this case, it meant that snipers could get away with just sitting in the doorway. They still got a view of the midpoint, while also getting a decent amount of cover from connector and valley. And if the sniper got pressured in any way, they could instantly dip into the back room with the small health and ammo, meaning they risked very little in exposing themselves there due to that active escape route at all times. So the only real potential punishment to standing in the doorway was the splash that you could potentially get from the cramped hallway. But beyond that, it was significantly safer than standing on the balcony itself, as it gave you the chance to just walk away from a bomb or a rapidly approaching scout to completely nullify both. So I finally changed this by Alpha 13. The exit at present is now a more boring 90-degree angle one, with some cover lining the doorway. But from what I've seen, it's killed that pretty strong sniper hold spot. Not that the doorway ever got much prior feedback, at least so far as I remember, but it was worth changing regardless due to how oppressive and static it could be. Hopefully, that's the worst sightline issue out of the way. It's hard to tell at the time being, since such issues usually become a lot more apparent with the test of time, by which point it's always going to be too late, but regardless, I'll stay on my toes for the time being. That's it for the only major sightline point. Now on to our final gameplay chapter, with quick, rapid fire, smaller, noteworthy changes. So that's the two largest changes to the levels layout I can think of out of the way. Everything else has really been small touch-ups here and there if anything. So I'm going to try and fire off the notable ones in rapid succession, and give little details as to why I changed them. Starting with these two double high barrel crates I had right outside the flank exit. Tiny detail, right? But I had these for the exact reason of cutting off a sightline from the back of the flank to the valley. But over time, as things got moved around, I began to question how important this really was to gameplay. By around Alpha 10, I reduced it to just one crate, and now there's none there. Turns out, yeah, I was just being paranoid, the sightline wasn't that big of a deal. But I didn't remove either of the barrel crates due to them being an inconsequential sightline blocker. I actually removed both of them because it was far too exploitable for defenders to hide behind them and to use them as high ground to attack anyone coming out the flank exit. I know that I personally, as a scout main, used it as cover and high ground tons of times to catch people off guard while they were leaving that exit, and it was incredibly hard for them to contest with me due to that high ground. So it was worth removing for that very reason, because I don't want the flank exit to be any harder to push out of than it already is with its exposed angle where attackers can just really shoot in sometimes. Okay, this is a unscripted addendum to the barrel crate section. When it was 2 barrel crates, snipers managed to climb their way onto there because I put an oil barrel next to it, and needless to say, they somehow managed to snipe into Valley from on top of the crates, and no one coming at the flank exit really shot at them. It was absurd. It was absurd to watch. Like, you're seeing the footage right now, like some cuts of it. I don't understand how they managed to get away with that. It's staggering. They can't do that anymore because of course crates don't even exist, but I don't understand. I don't understand. Similar cover got removed from each team's backyards in Alpha 11. The same cover I discussed in the last devlog, which existed to cut off the sightline going from the flank exit to its entrance and backyard. Due to how much key elements got moved around, from the flank itself changing a bit to the spawn exits completely being reworked several times, it wasn't really needed anymore, and only served to make the flank harder to rotate to. So in service of making the flank easy to use, especially with the ongoing valley cramping issue, I killed it. Other things to note, this medium health pack at mid got swapped with the large ammo packing connector by around like Alpha 11. This was just done to give people more incentive to take and use the connector, while also providing easier to access ammo at mid since there wasn't an abundant source of it. It also makes this back flank a tiny bit harder to hold now, which I think is a good thing, as now defenders roaming around this back spot have to use these 2 small health packs, as opposed to one big central medium they could freely control at any point. The last change I'm going to list here is the connector itself. I always thought it was a bit bland, and far too close to what Product has, so I took a hammer to it in Beta 1 and decided to quote unquote crock it up by making it more of a central back flank room with some 45-degree angles. Turns out, this was a horrible idea, because by removing the risk the route provided in taking the shortcut, and having the new 45-degree angle exit out to the flank and balcony, it just made it way too easy for defenders to exploit in order to pop out and attack the people taking Valley, rather than its intended purpose of just being a shortcut around the point to attack defenders. So this got reverted by Beta 2. Whoops on my end, but it was a worthwhile experiment at the very least. On a much smaller note, Beta 2 changed this area in the back flank to be mildly high ground. Yeah, I reverted that. No more high ground, just back to how it was. I don't want people being able to more easily camp the flank exit, as I mentioned previously, and this was another contributor to that, although a lot less extreme than the barrel crate. So that's all the smaller, noteworthy changes. It's worth noting, of course, this devlog does not cover every single change I made to the level in every single version, mainly because there's a lot, and if you want to see those, just go read the update log. Look at it, it's long. I don't want to read that. If you want to, you can. So now with every single one of the major gameplay changes covered, we can finally move on to the present state of the level, the detailing, and my future plans. So let's discuss Beta 3 next. Okay, so this video is now getting pretty long, and I imagine a 4th chapter dedicated purely to changes in the beta versions just for detailing, before even getting into a 5th chapter for future plans, would be a bit much. So I've condensed this section down as much as I possibly could. It's still going to be long, but welcome to Beta 3 and my future plans. The first thing to note is that Beta 3 is a milestone version because it presents the start of me producing custom models for the gameplay space. These are currently dev texture blockouts with simple details, so I can just test their collisions within the gameplay space before giving them a visual uplift. The first model I made is this big wooden planter, which was designed for the cover around connector. Secondly, I made a future wooden log notice board thing. I'm not so sure right now, but I have some reference images for it. And lastly, the giant asteroid pylons at mid have finally been replaced by some custom announcer towers. Now before anyone comments how the top of them looks, yeah, some of these are just like this in real life. A square on a triangle frame? I don't really know how to feel about it. It's all temporary though. The real starting off point for level detailing was some basic brushwork and terrain work I did here and there to really get a feel for the theme ahead of time and to cover my important bases first. To start with, in Beta 1 I changed much of the groundwork into displacements to see how the ramps in the alphas translated to natural looking terrain for gameplay. These were my jumping off point both due to how important these were for gameplay and just because displacements in general tend to be mildly annoying to put together, so it was better to get them done as soon as I could. Beta 2 had me detail these team-based shacks at mid, which are my fun little scout and soldier toys that they can exploit for high ground. I mainly used these as a testbed for using cylindrical brushwork to produce these logs for the architectural style which I want to go for. RIP to the level's brush sides count, but I hope the results are unique enough and pretty enough to be worth that sacrifice. These were honestly kind of hard to contextualize detailing wise due to the geometry being very gameplay first. But since they're in this mid courtyard, I think they work very well as just tiny bench spots and shade for visitors. I'm 100% gonna model custom assets for these, maybe little leaflet holders for the walls, but I'm content with them for the time being. Lastly, in Beta 3, I fixed up the back flank and got some temporary detailing done for the divider building in the flank. I'm not a big fan of it right now though, as the intention behind this building is to be a gift shop and viewing point for what will be the hot springs down below. But as of right now, the building has a far too slanted roof angle wise compared to my architectural references and is completely quote unquote portrait shaped. So it doesn't really feel like it architecturally signifies that the back of the building is a viewing area beyond the large windows. If anything, it feels like a weird house or communal building to me. So I do plan to rework this building, and the easiest method will be to cut the building in half outside the gameplay space to make a much wider back section that is intended to be that aforementioned viewing area. Meanwhile, the main roof of course just needs less of a slant to it. But those are not my only future plans. In general, Beta 4, depending on the feedback I get, should focus a lot more heavily on just getting the baseline detailing down. I have some really cute ideas, and because this video is long enough, I'll skim over them rather than going into depth. Okay, so in my head, I really want the red spawn to be a little museum of the national park, with a cute gift shop and everything. The players themselves will probably be sitting in a decently out the way staff section, kinda like what Humbridge's spawn is, but a lot more prettied up since I made that before I had proper 3D modelling knowledge. Meanwhile, blue side I'm not concrete on. I'm considering some kind of water plant-esque building. Maybe there's an electric dam in the skybox, which the national park helps to maintain. Meanwhile, for the two back flank buildings, I really want to have one of them be a little like national park mailroom. I just think that would be really cute. National parks do apparently have mailroom buildings after all. Sometimes, not all of them do. I need to look into it more. That's my brief rundown for future plans. Since this video has gone on for long enough, yeah, it's a pretty short section. Overall, I'm quite happy with Ivory's current state and its progress. I really wish I got more done on the level overall, given how long it's been since my last devlog. But once this video is out of the way, I'll be able to grind away at it again alongside any other personal projects I have. So now for my mostly unscripted outro, where I'm going to explain where I've been and why Ivory was on the back burner for so long. So, hello, it's me, Aspenly, completely unscripted. First of all, I will formally apologise to anyone that was expecting the Alexandria video. I was expecting it myself, and I had the script mostly written up. I was very happy with it. I got started on the video assets, and then my SSD died. Now, I didn't actually lose anything beyond the script itself, but for me, writing scripts, even for these devlogs, it's like the hardest thing in the world. I have to sit there and write, and then I have to make sure that what I write isn't boring, is cohesive, is interesting to listen to, and I suck at that. I can write for like hours at a time when it's messaging people about like a topic I'm interested in, but when it comes to making like a formal script or like essay, it's like, actually no, I can do essays, I just can't do scripts. I will still make a video on Alexandria at some point because I think the subject is interesting, but I'll probably wait until I've updated it more, maybe for its workshop release. I've got other things to get out of the way first. So yeah, what else has like held up Ivory's development? Well, you may have heard of this little thing called the Man vs Machine update, where, you know, they had a blog post and everything. If you don't know this about me already, I used to make a lot of Man vs Machine maps. I made Whitecliff, I made Humbridge, I made Encounter, and I made Whitecliff Event. So when my friends saw the blog post, they wanted to make a Man vs Machine map, and I was like, I may have fallen off making Man vs Machine maps, but you're not making one without me. So I spent like 2 months grinding away at a Man vs Machine map. To be fair, a lot of that was procrastination up until the very end of the deadline, and then I just worked for like 2 weeks straight. I'd go to work, I'd come home, I'd work on the level, I'd go to sleep, I'd go to work, I'd come home, I'd work on the level, I'd go to sleep. It was just non-stop. So I made Man vs Machine Dionysus, and my next video, if I don't procrastinate on this and my assets don't go missing and my script doesn't go missing, will be about my Man vs Machine maps, and I will discuss them in length. So it should be more well put together than my devlogs, because it's a proper video as opposed to a development log on a map I'm working on, so it should be nicer, it should be nicer. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoy Ivory. I'm actually going to use this end part of Ivory's development to properly learn Adobe Substance Designer and Painter, so I'm hoping that's a topic I can get into in the next video. I actually had a whole part of my script where I was going to talk about it, like both pieces of software, but I didn't want to talk down to you guys. I'm assuming you know what Substance Designer or Painter is, and if you don't, you can infer it from the, you know, titles of the applications. So I think it would be much better to save that topic until the very next video, but I really want to learn those. It would be a really good skill set to have. And as you can tell from the background footage that's playing right now and the music, I've gotten into Deadlock a little bit. I'm not good at the game, I'm like okay, but I've really been enjoying it. Actually, the music is also because this video was meant to release in October, and then I procrastinated on it and I spent too long because like I said, writing the script, having to rewrite it, and then getting footage is like, it's so difficult for me. Also, I do have to say, I'm not a big fan of how this video's come together by the very end here, but at this point it's like, I either sit on it forever, or I get it out. I'm just gonna release it. I want to release this before I work on something bigger. It's a good milestone to have, it's a good reminder that, hey, I exist, so yeah, I think that about covers everything really. I've ran out of things to say. Bye!